There. I think we got it. So my terminology here, hi, by the way, I'm Lisa, I should have led with that. Y'all are roomers, y'all are Zoomers in front of me. That's my terminology that I'm working with. I have to give credit where credit is due. A former student named Sam came up with that terminology, and I will say hi to the recording just in case he's watching. So yes, I need to screen share so the Zoomers can be with me. That's step one here. We are all staring at the pretty blue webpage. That's what we're staring at right now. And I, separately from Zoom, am recording so that we can capture what happens in class. If you have to miss class for whatever reason, or if you just want to hear it again, then you can go back to it as well. But I'm only recording my audio and the screen share. So no personal pictures or other sorts of things will interfere with that. All right, so the setup for, in case the Zoomer's here, I have the Zoomers on the screen in front of me. I have a common screen share for the Zoomers and for the roomers, so we're all looking at the same thing. That is the setup that we're working with. In Zoom, get the chat window back open here. Just put that on the other screen. There we go. And we'll move this thing out of the way as well. There. All right, so welcome. We call this multiple regression / general linear model in educational research, I believe. I decided to shorten it, and I added the plural because general linear model would be like one day's class, right? We're going to do models, plural. So I am your host. I am Dr. Lisa Hoffman, but just call me Lisa. It's fine. I don't need the formality. And yes, my name is spelled differently, but it's pronounced the usual way. The story is that I was supposed to be an Angela when I was born. But when I came out, my mother decided that I looked like a Lisa, but not the regular kind. There may have been some pain medication involved because she's not normally one to deviate from tradition. But fortunately she did, and it makes it easier for folks to find my teaching materials online. So I keep everything public, as you may have gathered. That way future you can access this material again whenever you need to, and other people across the world who are seeking to get additional training can access it as well. So I try to work hard on my teaching and try to build materials that I feel are going to be helpful to bring folks along, and I want as many people to benefit from that as possible. So I host things outside. So in this class, Canvas will be used somewhat sparingly. It will be used to administer different types of assessments and to collect documents from you, but otherwise all course materials will be hosted from this page. The course readings that are on the link, you can see all of the references at the bottom of the page here, and also in the principal syllabus. Those are in Canvas in one zip folder. So all you have to do is download one thing and you'll have them all. I have a couple lectures planned for today. That way I don't ramble too much, which I tend to do when I'm a little bit on the nervous side, which is where I'm at right now. Get that out. All right, we're working on it. My computer's thinking about it. It really doesn't want to go to the other window. Come on, you can do it. No, it's like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. I think my settings are on too high. I'll fix that. I swear, Christy, who took me in here, like last week, and everything went perfectly. The second I get in front of people, then it's like, no, I don't believe you.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Ta-da. Okay, so a little bit about myself to start off with, and then it will be your turn. We will do the thing where we go around and introduce ourselves, just to warn you, so you can get your prepared remarks ready in your head. So this is my 20th year on the tenure track. I am a native Midwesterner. I have lived within about a 4-hour radius of Omaha, Nebraska my entire life, up till now, save for a 2-year postdoc at Penn State University. So I'm still working on my y'alls. Is that acceptable? So I think of it in terms of like Spanish conjugation, and I think of y'all as like the vosotros form. It's like second person plural. And I was told once that all y'all would be the third person, like all y'all. So I'm going to keep working on those things. You may occasionally hear me say other sorts of Midwestern expressions like, yeah, no. What that means is, yes, I heard you and I understood the question, and the answer is no. It is a common misconception that no, yeah is a thing. Nobody says that in the Midwest, I can guarantee you. So I am working on getting acclimated. I spent my winter break, and I'm using air quotes, packing up everything I own into boxes and then trying to find the boxes here and figure out where things go. Pro tip, if you've lived in a house for 7 years, go ahead and start decluttering now in preparation for your eventual move. Do not put that off until the packing process begins. I will say that being charged by the pound to move is all the incentive you need to get rid of things that you no longer need. So that's where I've been. I apologize for sending out a Qualtrics survey on a Saturday before classes start, but thank you all for 100% compliance and answering the questions. So I really appreciate that. I have taught graduate methods exclusively. That's all I've done. The difference is who I am teaching them to. I am used to a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon block where I have folks in front of me for an hour and 15 minutes tops. And after about an hour, folks get that look in their eye like, I'm done. And you start to see glances towards the clock. The clock was over here in my previous classroom. I note that it's over there. So this semester, I'm going to be trying my best to figure out how to make this new format work. And I welcome your feedback and your input into that process. I don't know how long we're going to go each session, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the end of class. Because human cognition is only capable of absorbing and working with information for so long, and it's dinner time. So, and everyone's been working all day long. I think there's only 1 or 2 of you who didn't indicate that you were already full-time employees who've been working all day. So I'm sensitive to that. I'm also sensitive to the fact that we want to be efficient and that you're here with a purpose, and we want to make the most of our time together. I've taught, like I said, graduate methods in a variety of settings. I'm originally from psychology as a discipline. So I was used to students who had come straight from undergrad with some research training and those sorts of things. And then at Iowa, I was moved into the College of Education, and it was much more folks who are doing qualitative research for the most part, a lot of teachers who are coming back to school to upskill and those kinds of things. And I'm guessing that this cohort may be more like those kind, but I hope to learn more about you either way, and we will try to make this work. So let me start with, there we go. Hide floating meeting controls. I swear I already did that. All right, so why might you be here? Reason number 1, and perhaps the most likely, this class is required and I just need to get through it. I hear you. You're going to get through it. I have never failed anyone in 20 years. I have had people try to fail by not turning in things and then email me desperately to ask for extra credit or to do other things, and they manage to get through. But we're not going to get to that point, right? So there's no fear. What I hope to instill by the end of the semester is not only was this not as bad as you feared, but you might want to get more training. And there have been several students who started the semester anxious and uncertain that this was going to be useful, and a few of them ended up actually getting master's degrees from our program because they discovered that it wasn't so bad and that it helped make their research better and that they got something out of it. So I'm hopeful to change your mind. So what I would like to have is, I want to learn about quantitative analysis, said no one ever, except me, because I picked this as a job. We're not going to be learning statistics per se. That terminology gets a bad rap. It sounds antiquated, it sounds unfriendly, and it sounds inordinately difficult. Whenever I go see a doctor and the nurse takes my blood pressure or who does blood work or whatever, they usually make conversation and they say, what do you do? And I say, I teach applied statistics to terrified graduate students. And that always inspires one common response. Can you guess what it was?
I hate math.
Oh, I hated statistics. I had to take that class. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I hate being poked with needles. So I don't understand why you picked your job either. To each their own. But what I try to focus on is the application of statistics to do quantitative research. I am not a statistician. As I said, I was trained in psychology, so I'm much more on the applied side. I actually don't have a very strong math background. I'm not proud of it, it just worked out that way because I was a psych major who was gonna help people, and I thought psychologists didn't need math. So I took the least amount of math I could to meet my college requirements and discovered in graduate school, oh wait, my bad. I should have taken a few more classes. So if you're thinking to yourself, I never took calculus, or it's been 20 years since I tried to do any of this stuff and I'm rusty, that's okay, join the club. What we will do is learn how to make the computer do the math for us, because that is how modern analysis happens. We are focusing on the logic and the process and the interpretation. So we're focusing on the idea of data analysis, research-driven processes that answer questions about quantitative data. That's what we're doing this semester. So applied math. And by the way, if you want to sound fancy on your CV, you can add data science instead. That sounds better than statistics nowadays. I will say though that in terms of data science coursework, it's often more about prediction at the expense of theory testing. Like data science is, I manage a target and I want to figure out how to sell the most of these widgets at the target based on your buying history. You might throw everything you know about a person into a problem to see what kind of prediction you get. But then that doesn't leave you the opportunity to answer questions about why this factor matters where this one doesn't. So we're focusing on more of a theory testing kind of perspective, variables chosen meaningfully for reasons to be able to expand what we know about your research in its field. So we are trying to emphasize not the math, but the language and the logic that underlies this process. And I'm guessing most of you had Christy for intro, or there was another adjunct who was teaching it, right? So they're not here. You can tell me, was it scary? No, it was okay? They're like, I'm not going to answer that question. Zoomers, scary or okay? So we're going to introduce a scale that I'm going to use throughout the semester. It's called the thumb scale. My scale is continuous. It stops here as the best. It goes here to meh, as my son keeps saying, and all the way down here. So if you give me a thumb rating in terms of how your first class went, in terms of scariness, like not scary versus terrifying, can I get a thumb rating from folks? Okay, so most folks are sort of like between here and here. That's about what I expected. But just in case, I wanted to give you a disclaimer. Because at Iowa, for instance, when I took over this class, it had a terrible reputation because it was taught as a weed-out class. It was taught to make people fail, honestly. That person retired. I can say whatever I want at this point. So I had to say this to get people off the ledge right away on the first day. We're not memorizing things. We're not calculating things by hand. We're not proving or deriving things. If you want to learn how to do those sorts of activities, the stat department is where you should go. And no shade on those folks. They have a different purpose and a different goal in mind when they're teaching things that way. That's not my purpose. So we're not going to be computing things by hand. I'm going to teach you how to use software to do that. Why not? Well, people are bad at it. No matter how careful you are, you're likely to make mistakes. Computers are always going to do it better. There's research that suggests it doesn't work. So here's an article that I have linked here. Eliminating ANOVA hand calculations predicts improved mastery. And that's not what you're going to do in the future. My hope is that each of you would take these models and run with them. Either use them in your research or have a basis with which to read other people's research and understand what they're doing. None of that involves dropping a minus sign and losing 5 points on your test, right? That's not what's going to happen for you. And Aside from the models in this class, which could theoretically be done by hand via matrix algebra, more advanced analyses cannot be done by hand, period. They involve iterative algorithms that search for an optimal solution across a series of things they're trying to maximize at the same time. You can't do that by hand. That is known as maximum likelihood estimation, for those of you who may have heard that. So to me, it doesn't do any good to set the stage for things that you aren't going to need further on. So I'm teaching this from the perspective of what can we build on. So students often are afraid of stats because of the math, but I'm here to tell you the hard part is the working memory load. It's a cognitive problem because you're trying to keep track of different ways of expressing the same ideas. So you will hear me use words. I do a lot of gesturing, like slopes this way, that kind of thing. You will hear me speak in notation, like beta this or sigma this, and then we will have R code that corresponds to the words, to the notation, to the ideas. So trying to keep all of that together at the same time, that's the hard part. It's not the math. And logically, there are a series of if this then that I can help you learn that make this process a little bit simpler than it otherwise would be. So to manage the working memory load, I would ask that you not check out in between classes if at all possible. Once a week is not going to be optimal for your learning. The material builds cumulatively, so it can quickly snowball if you sort of put things off and try to catch up later. So this is my impassioned plea, please don't do that to yourselves, it will hurt. So my approach is that I believe everyone's capable of doing this. I don't care if you've never had calculus or algebra. I don't care if all you do is qualitative research and that's all you want to do and you just got to get through this class. I hear that. But everyone is capable and everyone can benefit. And I have the benefits down here: better research, more opportunities, and actual money. I paid off my student loans by teaching workshops in the summertime. I have gotten to travel to Australia, Switzerland, Sweden, Germany most recently a few summers ago through this work. I've gotten to see the world in a way that I otherwise wouldn't. I have, if you look at my CV online, there's a common denominator. I'm often second or third because at the beginning of my career, I ran all the analyses and I wrote the results sections. Now, I train students and postdocs and junior faculty to run the analyses and write the results section. I'm more of a supervisory role. But when I was a graduate student, like most of my publications were of that kind. So I had a stronger record coming out of graduate school because I did methods. And I think that each of you can also benefit from those sorts of collaborations. So I focus on accessibility, I focus on mastery. I want each of you to feel comfortable asking questions at any point for any time about anything. And if you're shy and you don't want to talk in front of people, either on Zoom or in the room, DM me. I'm watching the chat. I'm happy to answer questions anonymously to the group. And yes, I am trained. That's why I keep looking down at my monitor here to watch the chat thing here. I believe in mastery. I don't believe in tests. We're not going to have any. Not for this purpose and not for this level. I know that's somewhat controversial. If I were training ER doctors and nurses, and this man is going to bleed out if you don't know what to do right now, a test is appropriate. You need to know what to do right now. But no one is going to die if you can't remember the formula for sums of squares, right? That's not going to happen. So I don't believe in sort of one and done, like this is your test, this is it, because it can sink you. If you have a bad day or you just had a bad week, right? Things happen. You can get behind at work, your kids can get sick, just life happens. So most of the things that we do, I would give you points for trying, and the things that you're assessed on, you get multiple attempts at. What the materials are that I'll be working with, I divide my course into what I call units, which is usually a lecture and at least one example, if not two. And the way that I divide up the material, I have slides that focus on sort of the what and the why of the concepts, sort of the higher level stuff, a little bit more abstract, some examples thrown in. But then I also have curated examples where we have computer code, computer output, and questions, and we walk through and focus on the interpretation. My current plan is not to run software in class. I have seen that go sideways more often than not when people get behind and they just start like typing or clicking and they're not sure what's going on because we're all in different spots. And as you've noticed, I don't have a TA. So I don't have someone who can be on the Zoomers and the Roomers and answering questions simultaneously. So we'll go through things in such a way that I hope to teach you how to do these analyses, but to make it so that we can all sort of stay on the same page quite literally. The exception to this structure is the first unit, which is where we are now, is I'm going to make a video and literally show you, like, if you've never opened this program before, where to start. Because R is intimidating. Has anyone here played with R software yet? A couple people? Do you like it? Okay, are you lying?
No.
You really like it? Okay. There's some folks that like it. When you open it for the first time, there's like 87 different windows in the window. And I'm like, what is all of this? And there's all these language like objects and environments and consoles and all these things. It can be a lot. So I want to give you a gentle introduction over video so that you can have the video and you can be playing along with your own stuff at your own pace. That will be the first thing that you'll be asked to do. And all of these materials, as I mentioned, are available at the course website. And let me go ahead and click that to make sure the link works. There it is. Speaking of which, if you're looking at this page and thinking to yourself, yeah, 1996 called and it wants its HTML style back, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I do it this way for one simple reason. One page. Everything you need is on one page. So at the end of each class, right, here's the materials that we'll go through. Here's what you're supposed to do ahead of time. I will post videos of whatever happened in class. So I will show you what it looks like from previous courses that I had at the University of Iowa, for instance. I'll click on the one for multi-level models. Their table is green. So this is how I keep it straight in my head as differences in color. Zoomers, are we still connected? Can you still see everything and hear everything? Okay, I don't trust the owl for whatever reason, so I'm just making sure that it's all copacetic. So as you can see, I have lecture 1 and then I have the video link and I say how far we got. I don't trust myself to like build slide decks that are the exact right amount of time. I've never been able to do that, so we just get through what we get through and then I make it down. The videos are hosted on YouTube. So what is being captured is the screen share and the audio of the room. And the reason that I use YouTube is twofold. It does closed captioning almost instantly on its own, and it does a decent job, I would say, and it generates transcripts that are searchable. So if I'm talking about homework, you can type homework into the search bar and it will take you exactly in the video where I talked about the thing. So the students have found that to be very useful, particularly students for whom English is not their first language and who find me to speak very quickly or mumbly upon occasion. I'm already very highly caffeinated, so we've got the Sprite here to try and bring myself back down again. But if you need to hear anything again, the videos are there for you. If you need to hear it in the future, the videos are there. And if you're sick and you can't come, or even on Zoom, the videos are there so you don't have to worry about what you missed. All right, back to the show here. What you're going to be doing then, a couple different kinds of activities. One is what I call a formative assessment. Other folks might call it a quiz, but it's not really a quiz. These are sometimes open-ended questions, more often than not multiple choice questions that provide a structured review for whatever we talked about last time. And those will be administered through Canvas. I have planned 7. Each is worth up to 3 points. You get 2 points for doing it. Okay, I don't care if it's right. You just to engage in the material and give it a shot. And I will set it so you have multiple attempts. So if you go through it and you're like, oh wait, I realized I screwed that up. You want to turn it in again? Good. I will give you up to 1 more point for getting things right. So if you bomb it, you're still okay. This is only like 21 points out of your grade. By the way, my grading system like stops at 100. I don't do the math, so everything just sums to 100 for ease of homework. So you get practice analyzing data and interpreting results. These are going to be based exactly on the examples we go through during class. I don't want you fighting with R. That is not the point of this class. So I want to minimize the programming aspect as much as possible so that we can focus on the interpretation. So you would be asked to do things like change the name of the data set that you're working with, change the name of the variable, those kinds of tasks. So you'll have templates essentially that you can fill in things. That way you have a structure to start from. And I will say, please don't ask ChatGPT for help, please. Here's what happens. it will come up with a completely different way to do the same thing, and I can't guarantee that it works. I have also, in my classes, found lots of errors in things that it says. It is, AI, in my estimation, with respect to this material, is very good if you know what to ask. For instance, I grew up using SPSS and SAS. I'm relatively new to R. So I might say something like, what is the R equivalent to this command in SAS? And I would look for that. But I would never say, here's my data, what should I do? Because it's not there yet. And in fact, in my advanced classes, one of the activities I do in formative assessments is ask a question and have them grade the response. Because if you don't know what you're doing, it sounds fine. When you start to poke holes in it a little bit, it falls apart real quick. So I just ask, please ask me for help. They pay me. Did you know that? Like, it's not like you're bothering me. I am paid to do this. So don't be afraid to reach out, even if it's a stupid question or you feel dumb asking it, because you know what's going to happen in this code? You're going to struggle for like a half hour, and the answer is going to be, oh, you missed a comma. You missed a parenthesis, like something like that, right? If there's an error to be made, I have made it. I guarantee it. So I can usually spot these pretty quickly. In homework, though, I want you to work together if that is your preference. But at the end of the day, each of you will do your own assignment because each of you will have your own data set. The homework system that I have, I'll do a quick demo for you and then you'll have a chance to practice it as one of your first activities. What happens is I simulate data, meaning I make it up with a common story and a common design, and I use each of your ID numbers as a random seed to generate a person-specific version of the data. So you all have the same variables, you won't have the same answers. So you can work together to develop the code and the interpretations, but ultimately the correct answer is tied to whatever your data set showed. That way you can work together but also work separately. There are two kinds of questions, computational and results. So let me go back to the multi-level class I just finished. Your homework system is not ready yet. So don't try to go find it and do it right now. I know you're all chomping at the bit to do homework, right? It's really exciting. But I wanted to see if I had any late adds or drops before I got the thing ready. But I'll open this up just to show you what this is going to look like. My connection is not private yet, that's okay. It doesn't need to be. I'll have my husband fix this, it's a security thing. So you will sign in with your name and your ID number after the seed. So I have set up a bunch of pretend logins so that I can do this on demo purposes. So I'll just do one of those. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I am person 8. Each of you will have your own portal. So you will have the assignments that are available. It will say begin or continue if you haven't finished it. If you have finished it, it will say view submitted responses. There will also be, as you can see at the bottom of the page here, all your various point totals and where you stand with respect to each so you can see. So homework 0, for instance, that's the one that you will do first, is about the syllabus. It's worth 1 point of extra credit. So we're starting you off ahead of the game. So if you have data files to download, such as individual data sets, they will be here, as well as what I call starter syntax, which are essentially templates to get you started to fill things in with respect to the commands in the program. So the two kinds of questions you'll answer, one is computational, where the answers are numeric input. So for instance, this one is about the syllabus. How many homework assignments were there in this class? I don't remember. I'm going to say 6. That's wrong. I know it's wrong because there's a red box. I believe in this class there were only 3 because I had them doing other stuff instead, so I'm going to hit enter, and it turns green. So you know immediately if you're on the right track. And you have infinite attempts to get these numbers right. I don't know or care how many times it takes you. It doesn't matter. And if for whatever reason you can't find an answer, after you submit it, the correct answer will be shown next to the one that you last entered. So we would go through and answer a bunch of these questions. Those are infinite attempts. The other kinds of questions are what I call results. These are paragraph completion. It turns out that interpreting data analytic results is so algorithmic, I can program it, and I have. So for instance, do you remember p-values from IntroStat? There's two choices in how you talk about a p-value. Significant, not significant. We're not going to do the retain, reject, the null thing. We're not going to do that. No one talks like that. They don't. When you read a research article, they do not use those words. They say X was significantly associated with Y such that blah, 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 blah. So if I have a relationship between two variables, for instance, say a correlation, that correlation can be positive or can be negative. So a drop-down answer for a correlation type question would say significantly positive, or non-significantly positive, or significantly negative, or non-significantly negative. You pick the one that applies based on your results. And because they are multiple choice, you don't get infinite attempts. That would make a whole lot of sense. But in the paragraphs, so you can see a little bit here, like this 0 right here, that is one of the fields up here. So when you find an answer, it populates in the results section so that you know what the value is that you're interpreting. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. We're okay? We're good? Okay. So you're writing results sections, essentially. The computer's helping you do it. And I've structured them in such a way that this is probably more detailed, but reasonably close to how it would be in a manuscript. So hopefully these can serve as examples for how you would talk about this type of analyses in your research. When you are done, you can check and save your answers. And to submit, finally, you hit submit final answers, and then there's one more time where you hit submit for real with your ID just to make sure that you didn't accidentally hit submit. And each of these then, after the due date passes, once you submit, the right answer will be shown if it's not the right one, and then your answer will be shown. So if you get something wrong, you can see what it should have been. Hopefully work backwards and figure out where you went wrong, but if not, then that's where we can talk about what happened. And so each of these is tied to whatever you found in your analysis. So those are the kinds of activities that you will be due for homework. Does that make sense? Okay. Because this is the only way I found to clone myself, essentially. It's like I'm standing over your shoulder saying, nope, try again, nope, try again. And the way that I structure the questions is to start by making sure, for instance, that you have the right model. So each model has a value associated with it that's like a fingerprint. And if you get that number right, you know you have the right ingredients. You have the right variables in your problem. And so the next question would make sure that your variables are set up correctly. So there's sort of checks that make sure that you're in the right spot before you get too far down into it. So 5 of these are planned, worth 59 points for accuracy. About half the points are for the computational questions and the other half are for the results. So you should be doing just fine if you can get through most of it. I also want you to apply these models to something you care about, ideally. So start thinking now about what you might do. It would be 1 to 2 numeric outcomes predicted from 2 to 3 predictors. And I will provide you with examples of where you can find public use data if you don't have any data. But I would strongly encourage you to speak with your advisors or your peers or anybody who has quantitative data that they might want help analyzing so that this could turn into something real. Ideally, this would be the core part of an APA-style manuscript with like a paragraph for the introduction, a paragraph for the discussion, but then like the method and results section that you would actually want to use. And it can form the basis of a conference presentation or submission, manuscript submission, something like that. I'm going to have an outline document, essentially what is your plan, that I can provide you with feedback. That's due at the end of March. The report itself will be due on this date, and you get to revise it. So I will ask you to submit this as a Word document. I will leave you comments and feedback. And just like when you get a manuscript back, like the best case scenario is revise and resubmit, right? That's what you're going to do. And if you successfully address all the points, you get all your points back. I don't expect you to be perfect. I expect you to try. And once I get these plan documents and I see what folks are going to be doing, I will also provide a much more structured rubric by exactly what to expect and how much each element is worth. That way I can make sure I'm covering all of the bases. In terms of late work, I allow it. Life happens, as I said. But I know that things with hard deadlines get done and things with soft deadlines get pushed. And I want to be in the hard deadline category as much as possible. So late homeworks are 3 points off, late formative assessments or the plan is 1 point, and late project reports are -5. Nothing you can't come back from, basically. if things go sideways. However, if you're looking at the syllabus and you see conflicts, oh, I'm going to do my comprehensive exams that week, or I have a conference that week, or I'm going to have other things, let me know. We can adjust the due dates. Just if you're planful about it, that's the thing. And I promise that deadlines will never be pushed sooner than they are right now, but they might be pushed later if I don't feel like we're ready to do it yet. I want to make sure there's at least 1 week before you're responsible for doing anything. And I'm used to the Tuesday, Thursday schedule where, oh, if I don't finish it on Tuesday, I'll just finish it on Thursday and it'll be fine. I'm not going to see you for 2 weeks. So that's, right? Because Martin Luther King Day is next week. I looked at the schedule and I was like, I have 13 classes. So we got to make each of them count. But that also means that I have to be like very careful about aligning to the schedule. So if needed, I will push things later, but not sooner. All right, that's a good place to stop. It's 5:25. How are we doing, folks? Thumb check? Okay, questions? Where are we at? Slide 8. That's about right. Okay, my job then, answering questions. You all know the thing about questions, right? There's 2 things that can happen if you ask a question. You're thinking, everyone's going to know how dumb I am and that I don't follow. No. 2 things are going to happen. Either someone's going to go, oh, thank goodness they asked the question. I had the same question I was afraid to ask. Or they're going to think, wait. I know the answer, I think. Listen for the answer. Now I feel better about myself because I knew the answer. Either way, you make the rest of your peers happy. So please do not hesitate to ask questions. I prefer them during class so we can all hear the answers. But if you want to talk to me individually or over email, that is totally fine. The way that I run my office hours is a bit atypical. So thanks to everyone for completing the survey. I literally went through the list and I tried my hardest to make sure I picked some times that would hit everybody. I landed on 2:30 to 4 Tuesdays and Thursdays. So stretching into the 2 blocks that I had met. I know there's at least 1 or 2 folks who said, yeah, I work full time. I don't have availability during the business day. I do accept individual appointment requests as well, but those are the times that I had settled on. You don't need an appointment, just show up. I go first come, first serve. And historically, students have joined Zoom office hours just to literally schedule time to do their homework. And that way, if they get stuck on something, they ask me right away and they keep working. And often what happens when homework is due is that people show up with the same questions. There's common sticky points. And so then everyone can hear the answer and keep working. So I do it in a group-based format. There is no expectation of privacy that way, which is why I say if you want to talk to me individually, I'm happy to do so. So your job is to review on your own as much as possible, focusing on the vocabulary, the terminology, the notation, linking those things because that's going to be the hardest thing to stick at first, the logic and the concepts. Please don't wait until the last minute to start your homework. I try to answer emails promptly. I do answer emails over the weekend when I can, but if it's due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. and you start at 10 p.m., it's not going to happen. 10 p.m. does not exist for me anymore. I'm too old for that. So please don't wait until the last minute to start. At the very least, download your data, get it imported, and at least know that you've gotten that far, because a lot of times that can be the sticking point at first especially. When you're asking for help, it is easiest for me if you take a screenshot of like whatever the error message is and whatever the code is that you tried to write, because then I can answer questions like on my phone. If you send me a file that I have to download and open and then figure out where you were, that will take me a lot longer to respond. So emails, screenshots if possible. Readings. I have a textbook for you. It's at the library. It's free. You can read it online, all of you can. And you can download chunks of it at a time, like so many pages at a time is one of those deals. That being said, I do like the book. I think it does a really good job explaining things. I don't follow it directly. I have my own way of doing things. So if you're like, yeah, I'm busy, see above answer full-time employee plus full-time student, and the book is what gets pushed, I'm okay with that. My hope is that it provides a future self-reference for elaboration. The same thing is true about the readings. I have some relatively, not in all cases, but relatively recent research on quantitative methods or tutorials that I have found useful, and so I'm passing them along to you. You don't necessarily have to read them all, but I think that they would be helpful. And practice. Learning how to do this with data you care about is the magic button that makes this stuff sync. There's no way I can replicate that with canned examples. So that would be like the most helpful thing that you can do once you've gotten through the rest of the coursework. Attendance. Hi Zoomers, you still with me? Gotta wave to the owl, sorry. I'm used to having my camera on the laptop. I don't care how you come. Okay? I don't even know who's in what section anymore. It doesn't matter to me. This is one class as far as I'm concerned. So if you want to show up in person one week, but another week you're not able to, fine. And vice versa is fine as well. If you want to eat, because it's over the dinner time, Midwestern dinner time I should say. Midwesterners eat at like 5:30. You want to bring food or drink in here? I'm fine with that too. It doesn't matter to me. The one thing I ask is please don't make us sick. If you're not feeling well and you're coughing all over the place, please don't come. Just go on Zoom if you're able to, and if you're too sick to even do that, get better and then come back when you're ready. So you won't miss out. As I mentioned, I record everything. All the materials are on the website. And I would say that if you're feeling like ghosting me because all the recordings are on the website, maybe not that. Historically, students have taken my classes asynchronously and done well, but that is not optimal. I would say the videos are to support review. They should not be used in place of class because it's too passive. Like you're just sitting there listening and watching. You're not necessarily like querying yourself in the same way that I will. Like I ask a lot of questions during class. I try to encourage participation. So that's a less optimal way to do it. If I need to pivot, I will. And this is also boilerplate from my slides, and I had to laugh today. We will move to Zoom if the weather is dangerous. Is that a thing here? I was in shorts on Christmas sitting on my porch. It was 75 degrees, and I thought, what just happened? Because we pulled out of Iowa, and it was -6. We had a period of snow and extreme cold 2 Januaries ago where my son, who was then 8, was in school 4 days out of 2 weeks. Because they cancel school when it gets dangerously cold in Iowa because they don't want the kids freezing to death at the bus stop. I'm guessing that's not a thing here. But if from what I've heard, if a snowflake might land, then we cancel everything? Is that true?
And go to the grocery store.
And go to the grocery store, yes. Everybody stock up on bread and milk because a snowflake might land. We'll go to Zoom, okay? If I need to pivot, I will. I will let you know via email. And the same thing is true. I have a 10-year-old. He's not quite the germ factory he was as a toddler, but you know, kids are kids. So if I'm sick and I'm gonna cough all over you, I will pivot to Zoom as well. So we're using R. I don't like R. I don't. Just gonna put it out there. Why do people like R? Because it's free. Especially as students, free is good. And if you are not anticipating being in an academic career where free software is abundant, you can take your knowledge and run with it. So you can also install it on any operating system. Mac, Windows, Linux, you can have it on an iPad, I think. There's multiple ways to have R. Programmers like it because it's object-oriented and you can do all kinds of cool things. The problem is that you get what you pay for. The documentation is terrible. The packages that are the most popular are the ones that are documented well, and they are few and far between. And if you're used to other packages, so I'm familiar with SPSS, SAS, and Stata for the most part, as well as M+, their documentation is very regularized, like the commands are all regularized, there's a pattern, and you can follow it. R is the wild, wild west. There's base R, which has like its stuff. But then the thing that people like about R is that people make packages. They make their own little programs that go into R. And those have very little quality control. It's like some dude in his basement writing software, and you have to trust that that person knows what they're doing. Sometimes they don't. I have seen models that were not identified, meaning mathematically not solvable because they include redundant things in them, that R's like, here you go, have some numbers. So, oh, dude. My husband once taught a workshop, and he ran something in R that returned a probability of 1.2. You might recall from intro stat that probability should not be 1.2. Something went awry. So I've seen these things, and that's why I'm like, I don't like R. But I'm also a pragmatist, and when I look at job ads, people want folks to know R. R and Python, and there's some other ones too. I don't keep up on all of them, but this is something you can put on your CV that you know how to do. And if you do not already have one, you need a technical skills section that lists qualitative research programs, quantitative research programs, any kind of coding or web anything that can help set you apart from other folks when it comes time to find a job. So this, I think, will pay dividends just for that reason alone. We're not going to do point and click anything. Point and click is a great place to start, but it doesn't serve your future self. So I'm going to show you how to use code, which is referred to as syntax, fairly minimal, so that we can have not only efficiency, but also reproducibility. The problem with point and click is that you don't have a record of the options you've chosen. And certain packages, or programs I should say, like Stata and SAS and SPSS, all have a paste option that generates the code that the windows do. That's the best way to do it. There are GUI versions of these things, but if you're used to other packages, all is not lost. I would say that if you want to use SPSS, your textbook does too. So you could probably figure out the relevant commands just from their examples, so they do a very nice job with that. There's also a Windows-driven version of R that folks in Europe have developed. That should be a little more friendly. And JMP, I know, is what is taught on campus. I've actually never used it. I could pick it up if I want to, but I'm focusing on things that will allow you to grow for the future. So that was the rationale for the choice. But I don't expect you to be programmers. I want to minimize the difficulty that comes from that. So I don't need you to memorize the commands. What I need you to do is what I do. When I think about how to do an analysis, find something similar to what I need to do, copy it, start changing stuff. That's how you would do homework. Find and replace is going to be your new best friend. Honestly. Because change the name of the data set throughout the whole file. Change the name of the variable throughout the whole file. Those are the kinds of tricks that can make things a little bit more efficient. And please ask me for help as well. All right, it is, let's see, 5:37. Does that feel like a good time to take a break? Maybe? It's the first day of classes, I figure, or for us anyway. I figure we gotta like dive in slowly. Do we want to take a break yet, or do we want to keep going a little bit? It's democracy. Keep going. Hmm? We're okay? Okay, I gotta say, y'all are way more patient than my previous class. They would be totally looking at the clock by now. So no shade on the Iowa students. They're a different breed. All right, we'll keep going. So what you're supposed to know, the prereq material. Here's what I think of this as. Descriptive statistics. How do you summarize one variable and talk about it in a sample? Bivariate associations, things like correlation. How are two things related to each other? Some stats concepts, such as null hypothesis significance testing, meaning p-values, we're going to review all this stuff. Not just because it's been a month since you would have gotten out of that previous class, and I know how things go, like I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone what I was talking about a month ago, but also because you didn't hear it from me. And every instructor has their own way of talking about things and their own vocabulary, and so I want to make sure that you're used to the way I talk about things before we get to the new stuff. The rest of the class, though, is focused on general linear models, and I want to compare and contrast how this might be taught otherwise because I do it differently on purpose. Brief story time. My first tenure track job was at the University of Nebraska, where I was an undergrad, actually. So I was there. You'll see the thread here across the Midwest. I went from undergrad at Nebraska, graduate work at KU, out to Penn State for a postdoc, back to Nebraska as a faculty member, back to KU as a faculty member, Iowa as a faculty member, and now I'm here. And my first job at Nebraska, I was tasked with teaching everything else, like beyond the first year sequence, like all the upper level models. And so I spent a lot of time developing those courses, And I started to see sticking points of things that were harder than they should have been because they were things I thought they already should have had, but they didn't have them in the same way. So when I was tasked at Iowa with teaching this material for the first time, which was like our first year sequence, I thought about like, what would they need to make the future easier? And I do it from that perspective instead. And the biggest difference is that I'm trying to build a skeleton for you to hang things on, essentially. A lot of stats textbooks are like, here's this thing, and here's this thing, and here's this thing, and here's this thing, and the connections between them are either minimized or not there. It makes it a lot harder because then you're trying to learn 9 things when it's really like one thing with like 9 tweaks. So I approach it from the one thing, oh, here's an extension, oh, here's this, oh, here's this. And it's different, which is why I don't follow that textbook very closely. So it may be a little bit different, but to assure you that we are going to cover the same stuff, here's the linkage. So the general linear model is an overarching framework in which we are going to predict one numeric outcome per person. And I'm using person as the unit of analysis, but if you do research on other kinds of units, you can think of those too. So does anyone study like schools or like organizational units in your research, do you? Yeah, so like a school is your person, essentially, if that's your unit of analysis. So the term general, funny enough, is actually not general. It has a very specific meaning. Statisticians are terrible at naming things. Terrible. It means an outcome whose residuals, terminology we'll get to, are supposed to be normally distributed. It's a very specific kind of variable that these models are designed to predict. Where all the different names and all that this and this and this and this come from is what kind of predictors you put in. But when you move out of this family of models, all the different names based on what kind of predictors go away. That's not a thing anymore. So I don't feel like it's a useful way to approach it, given that it doesn't scale. But that being said, we're predicting one numeric outcome. If we are doing it with one predictor that is numeric as well, that is called simple linear regression. And I put linear in quotes because that's optional. And I really hate the term simple too, because it's like, of course this is not simple. This is graduate school. It's not supposed to be simple. If this were something you could teach yourself in 10 minutes, it would be a waste of your time and money. So simple is relative to less simple things. If you have 2 variables, that makes it less simple, that turns into multiple. And linear regression is a misnomer because you can fit nonlinear relationships in linear regression. Your line can be straight or it can be bendy. Bendy comes in lots of flavors. We're going to cover bendy in linear regression. If you have categorical predictors, meaning grouping variables, variables that are kinds, not amounts, that traditionally is called analysis of variance, or ANCOVA. If you have 2 groups in one predictor, that is known as an independent samples t-test, for instance, as a thing. If you have one variable, but it has 3 or more groups, that's one-way ANOVA. If you have 2 variables, guess what it's called? Two-way ANOVA. And factorial sometimes gets thrown in there as a symbol. So if you learned each of these things as separate things, it's way harder than if you understand that these are just flavors of one thing. And if you learn them as separate, it's not obvious how to combine things. So what if I have one variable that's numeric and I want a bendy line for it, and I have a grouping variable, oh, and maybe I want them to have an interaction such that the effect of the line variable depends on what group you're in. Like, that is theoretically possible, but if you approach it from a this, like, which box in the menu do I pick, you're not going to find it. As an analogy, I'm a terrible cook. I don't like cooking and I'm not good at it. I subscribe to a meal service where boxes show up on my porch and I put them in my microwave because I'm that brand of lazy. I would rather do extra statistical consulting as a side hustle so I can pay people to cook my meals for me. That's my plan. But once upon a time I thought, this is ridiculous. Like, you should learn how to cook. You're a grown-up, right? And all I could find were recipe books. Like, here's how to make this, here's how to make this, here's how to make this. And one day, finally, I found a book called How to Cook Without a Book that covered the principles behind how to make things, like how to sear a chicken. Or if you've seen the show Schitt's Creek, there's a very famous episode where they were told to fold in some cheese, and neither of the characters in the episode knew what fold in cheese meant, and I don't either, and they were like, just fold it in. Like, if you don't know what that means, that's not gonna help. So I think of like this approach as like how to cook without a book, like how to build a model. And what the model looks like is based on what you need, not what the prescribed choices are. As another analogy, another food one, apparently I'm hungry. As I mentioned, it's Midwestern dinner time. I used to go to a place that we would call like the Mongolian barbecue, like a hibachi thing where like you pick your ingredients and they put it all together. And you'd always see people that like all the choices, they were like, oh dude, like this is way too many, I don't know what to do. And for those people, they would have recipes like on the wall, like a scoop of this, a scoop of this, a scoop of this, and then they could go make it. This is the Mongolian barbecue, right? You can make whatever dinner you want to out of whatever combination of ingredients. That's the end goal here. But unfortunately, the limiting condition is right here. Now that's not to say that you can't predict other kinds of outcomes, but that's not what this class is about. The last 2 weeks, I hope to sneak in some where you go next to be able to build on this, because this core, this linear model's core, extends readily into all different kinds of data and all different kinds of research designs. So, all right, have I sold you? You're like, I have to be here, this class is required. But I want you to maybe feel like it's not gonna be as terrible as you hoped, as you feared, I would say. That's my goal. So, reviewing. What kind of data can you learn to analyze this semester? What are we trying to know about? Broader question, what population do we want to make inferences, conclusions? So from whom do we collect data? That's our sample. So as I said, units, people, schools, organizations, depends on your context of research, but I'm going to say people most of the time. So where to begin? Let's say, for instance, I have a researcher who wants to understand graduate student life, and they're planning a study in which they want to examine stress as it relates to well-being, and potentially conditional on what kind of degree program someone is in. Could happen. So then the questions one might ask yourself, well, do we want to have only students from one program? If we make that decision up front, then program is a constant, not a variable. That's an important distinction. A variable means it varies across your subjects, your units. A constant means it doesn't. In the notation for the models, this will be an important distinction, whether something is a constant or a variable. If we wanted to explore potential differences between programs, then we would need to sample multiple from the same college at a minimum. But is that enough? If we want to talk about grad student life, we can't just go to the College of Education because there's grad students all over campus. How many different colleges have graduate programs here? What, 10, 12? Quite a few, I would say. So if we want to generalize, we could expand our sampling design to include multiple programs from multiple colleges and potentially even multiple universities. Also, if we ask somebody, how stressed are you today? Do we trust that answer? My area of research is longitudinal analysis. So I would say, no, you do not trust that answer. Because just as you would not ask one person and use that one person to generalize to everybody else, to me, you don't sample one occasion and use that to generalize to the rest of someone's life. Same premise. So maybe several times would be better, so we get a better snapshot as to how people differ from each other and how they change over time or fluctuate across various situations. Do we trust people's answers? Do we trust self-report? Or is it better to get some kind of corresponding data? Not necessarily that the other people are right and the self-report is wrong, but we'd like to have like some kind of evidence that they're converging onto something. So we could collect data that corresponds to them from teachers, if you're talking about children, or partners, or other family members, things like that. So all of these extensions that would make our study more comprehensive and more generalizable lead us into what is known as a dependent sampling design rather than independent. And these are all great ideas, but that's not the GLN. So I want to be upfront and honest with you that while the things we're going to learn in this semester will help you, and they are the building block of more complex analyses, absolutely, they may be insufficient for what you need. So let's talk research for just a second. What kind of sampling designs do you work with in your research areas? Schools, you said? I'm calling you. What do you study about schools?
Right now, it's we're trying to sample from positive deviance in Spartanburg County. So which schools are exceptionally performant for like students in poverty and their literacy rates as defined by the state test score. So I mean the sampling, it's more of a mixed method design. So the sampling strategy, I mean I guess the sample is the entire district,
Okay.
the entire county. Spartanburg County consists of 7 districts. The problem is in that context it's like community bound. So I don't know I don't know that we're necessarily trying to generalize from the county about the rest of the country rather than trying to improve something in that county.
In the county.
So I don't know. I have many questions about like sampling in that regard, and like we can talk about it, but
So there are, you said 7 districts?
that's right.
Do you think that schools that come from the same district are more alike in their outcomes?
My preliminary analysis of data that I'm hoping to engage in more here would say that there is less across district variation than like schools. Like schools tend to vary more than they do with one another than like districts is my understanding, but I don't know, I guess I'll find out. I'll tell you in like 6 weeks.
Fair enough, yeah. So in that case, because you have so few schools, I would think of that as like a grouping variable that you could introduce into your analysis. You might not be interested in what makes districts different from each other. Or, sorry, you have 7 schools per district or 7 districts in the county?
7 districts in the county,
Seven
and
districts in
the
the county.
schools, the number of schools vary.
Gotcha, okay. So in that case, you could introduce which district is which as a predictor and examine the question. If you had like 30 districts, that would not be as feasible. You might have to do something different. But I'm guessing it's an empirical question, the extent to which schools from the same district are related to each other in these outcomes. What about kids from the same classroom? Do you think kids from the same classroom are more alike than kids from different classrooms? On the whole? Could they be?
And what out?
And that's a great question. Let's go with math test scores.
Yes.
Yes, maybe. Well, hopefully, right? If like your teacher's really good, then your students are doing well. That creates like a similarity among them versus some other teacher. What about rates of aggressive behavior?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe less. It's an empirical question though. Like anytime you have groupings that occur in nature, which seems like always in education, this is something you have to worry about. And that creates what is known as dependency, which is a fancy term for correlation. Units from the same whatever tend to be more related than units from different whatever. If I ask each of you every day for a week, how stressed are you feeling? Do you think that occasions from the same person are going to be more related than occasions from different people? Probably. Are some people just like more stressed out, period? And some people are less stressed out, period, or at least they report as such? Yeah, those kinds of mean differences introduce correlation. So we can't do a general linear model analysis on that kind of data because we have to be able to tell it, no. These cases need to be together and these cases need to be together and these cases need to be together. So if you have that kind of sampling design, these models are going to be insufficient, but they are a great starting point for building up. Because the other class, actually, do I still have it up here? Yes, I do. The multi-level modeling class. That's what this class is all about. And it starts with regression and adds stuff to get to be able to do that. Different kinds of variability as part of the model is essentially what happens. So there's a lot of research settings, I would say the majority, in which you have some kind of dependency or some kind of grouping or clustering that creates relationships among units from the same whatever. And these models that we're gonna work on this semester are not for that kind. So what are the vocabulary that go with that, just so that you know what to ask the Google about in terms of like where to move forward? Examples. So if we sampled multiple programs from the same university, let's say at least 20 or so, that would be known as clustered data or nested data or hierarchical data, in which case we would have differences among students from the same program as well as systematic differences between programs. And both of those sources of ability have to be part of our story. If we sample people more than once, either at different occasions or under different conditions, those responses from the same person are going to be correlated, and that's what's known as repeated measures data or longitudinal data. That's also a block. That's another term that you may hear. That's more of a stat term. I don't use that terminology a lot. And if you ask multiple people about the same target, so you get teacher ratings and parent ratings for a child, for instance, or if you have siblings and parents, or you have two partners in a relationship, that's dyadic data. So these are very common things in research that the general linear model is not designed to do. So I want to be upfront that this may be not all the things you need to know to do a good dissertation, for instance, or to do good research, but it is a starting point. So to summarize then, now we can have a good time standing. We're doing general linear models, big picture, with specific variants that go by specific names based on what kind of predictors are included. The emphasis is on logic, vocabulary, and process of using software. That's what we're emphasizing. We're going to start with stuff you already know. Univariate descriptive statistics, means, variances, that kind of stuff. That is designed to not only introduce you to how I talk about things, but to our software. Because new models and new software at the same time are a recipe for disaster. I've learned that the hard way. So we're going to start with stuff you've seen before and new software. And I will provide you exactly what you need to be able to do these things. You do not have to look elsewhere. There. Ta-da. How's that? No applause. Yeah. Definitely no applause for that. All right, it is almost 6. How about, do you want 10 minutes, 15? Get up and stretch? Have a snack? How do we do this? I told you I haven't done an evening class before. This is a whole new ballgame. What do y'all want?
I vote 10 minutes of that.
10?
Sure.
We're on the get moving, get the heck out of here club? Is that where we're at? Efficiency?
We got 10 in the chat too.
10 in the chat, yep, excellent. All right, then 6:07 specifically is when we will come back. All right, see you in a bit.
We'll go on a break.